As business owners, entrepreneurs, family men, it's difficult for us to find the time to put together projects like these. Even though it's something we really want to do, unfortunately, taking care of the things we have to take care of comes first. However, because of viewer support for people like you, we're able to continue doing this. Please consider joining our Patreon and supporting the Burn and Return podcast. You're listening to Burn and Return, a weekly 1-hour podcast covering news from the agricultural and turfgrass industries. With the DJ Scratch, you know what that means. That means it is time for another episode of Burn and Return. Look, I just
had a moment there. I had a flashback, Matt, to the old Turfs Up radio days where we couldn't see you as you did your shows, and you used the dramatic pause, maybe a little too much. You maybe have overdone on the dramatic pauses, and you'd be like, "Oh shit, did my internet drop? Oh, is something wrong? Did the nukes hit Matt?" Right? Did they have him pinned down? I mean, listen, if China releases,
boys, the feds are outside my windows and they're about to knock on my door.
They just put a steel chainsaw right through my fiber line. I'm going down, boys. Talking to you right now on the sat phone in my cave. I mean,
I'm coming in. It's getting real weird out here, guys. Someone help me.
Listen, this is
Search
completely
and rescue,
unrelated to
please.
turf.
Search and rescue.
I know that they've got all the prepper shows and everything like that, but I wish we could do like a YouTube series on who's got the best bomb shelter, bug out room, like all those kind of stuff, like as like an HGTV thing. Like talk about it, like not like, hey, this person's possibly insane, right? Maybe they're a little bit sane in the sense that they're getting ready for what might happen, but more in the vein that Jeff, it's a beautiful couch you have right down here, 30 feet below ground, just in case the world ends. It seems like it'd be a comfortable place to die.
Very much
if
so.
I need to bug out, I just slowly make my way over here to the corner. See, I'm hiding over in the corner right now. That's why I'm coming through on one channel, JPink, by the way. That's a radio trick. I'm not. And then when I need to come back from my prepper location, see, I'm back. And the people hearing the recording can probably hear that. Y'all probably can't. I probably came through on both channels for you, but
You sound great.
I was playing with my soundboard. Boys, how the hell are y'all doing, man?
Hey, great to be here. We skipped last week due to the holiday, so we had a lot of different articles to choose from, and man, boy howdy, there's been some doozies this week. And Ray, we've got all sorts of different things. People aggrieved at our industry, and I think we have more returns on this show than we've had in quite some time. So it's encouraging.
A little bit of good news, maybe. I mean, we need that right now because the last 6 or so months has been a real test. I mean, a real test of my positivity and optimism.
There's only so many, head on your lap bedtime stories that Sheila can read before you get bored with that. Find me.
Exactly.
Wait a second. Don't sign me up in that corner, DeMay. I don't ever get tired of bedtime stories.
Never get tired of those. All right,
fair
enough.
No,
and it is 9/11. All right. I'm gonna tell something that's really embarrassing. So in Knoxville today, there was over the weekend there was an air show, the Smoky Mountain Air Show, and today and yesterday the Blue Angels flew, and I was like, oh man, how perfect for remembrance of 9/11. We're gonna watch a video on YouTube with the kids, and then we're gonna go watch the Blue Angels fly, right? Because there's nothing that screams America like making your children watch some of the most horrific content the internet has to offer. And so, of course, I'm sorting YouTube videos by views, and it was horrific. My God, I was choked up. My wife is crying her eyes out as, we're just watching the horrors of that day, right? And I know my kids are like, well, what in the world? Why is Dad making us watch this? And then we get there, and the Blue Angels take off, and I just, where I was trying to suck it up and be tough guy in the car, I couldn't suck it up anymore, man. There's something about those damn airplanes flying over with the loud noises and the rumbling of the chest. And man, I just burst into tears. I just started crying. And my son looked at me like I was a moron. And it was okay. It was okay though, because clearly I needed to get it out of my system, and I did, and I felt a lot better afterwards. But it was wonderful getting to watch the Blue Angels on 9/11. I will say that.
That does seem pretty cool. If you've never seen the Blue Angels, I'd highly encourage you to do so. But yeah, that hey, we're not on turf for a second, but I think it's important. I read this article a couple days ago about how in the military now they are doing what you do, Matt. They are making sure that they educate soldiers, sailors, airmen, all that, right? Marines, to understand what that day was like, because now the newest members of those armed forces weren't even alive when that happened, right? So, for the first time, it's, it's fresh in everybody's mind who was there and everything like that, and who was experiencing that. But that's kind of wild to think about. And so, I don't know. I guess the thing that is always kind of striking at this time is, you have people that just are overcome by it and can't stand to think about it, and I get that. And then you have folks, that have to watch everything and kind of just re-experience the day, because it helps them get through it. It helps to remind them, hey, I was there, and this shit was so surreal that 20 years later, 22 years later, or whatever, it's 21 years later, that it's still hard to process. So, hey, I'll say this is thanks for being a human being, number one, and having emotions, and number two, being humble enough to share those with your son, that, hey, man, sometimes the shit's a lot, whether it's too much to process, or you're overcome with gratitude because we still live in a great, great country. But hey, the kind of country that lets 3 unemployable assholes sit on YouTube and talk about grass, man. How fucking great is that? USA, baby.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is hard to beat, and with that, I guess we should get into the talk here. Let's discuss this week's headlines.
Nothing to fear here. This is just the news.
This is just the news, and the first one here, we got a quick little headline to hit. Norway's Yara is close to acquiring Brazil's Petrobras fertilizer unit. And so it goes on to say here, Yara International ASA is close to acquiring the fertilizer unit put on sale by state-controlled oil company Petróleo Brasileiro, known as Petrobras. 2 sources with knowledge of the matter said on Friday. Petrobras has selected Yara's bid, and the deal now needs to be approved by the company's board, one of the sources said. An announcement is expected over the next 2 weeks. Yara has declined to comment on market rumors. Blah, 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 blah. Yara already owns 5 plants in Brazil and 24 mixing facility. It also owns mining and port operations, and they're just going to continue to expand in that. Now, here is why that is particularly interesting. If anybody has been keeping up with the situation that's going on in Europe and the gas supply, Yara has had to shut down a lot of capacity in the EU right now.
What this is allowing them to do is they're now able to produce 2,200 tons of ammonia and 3,600 tons of urea daily, around 20% of the urea consumption in the country. The unit is expected to be completed within 2 to 3 years. So, oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm misreading that. Construction of the fertilizer unit within the city. No, that is right. That is right. So, basically, what Yara is doing is shifting production from the EU over to Latin America. And what an interesting way to hedge the market, right? They see long-term viability in Latin America is way, way, way safer than Europe. I'm not going to lie.
I understand why.
That's kind of I do too, but at the same time,
I get it.
The point I wanted to make about this is that that is the piece to me that's most frightening. Is you have a company that has developed their own, slight take on Haber-Bosch, really pioneered that in Norway, and is now kind of abandoning their European Union presence at the strength that it previously was in favor of Latin America. Now, part of that is to say that, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It sounds like business is friendlier, long-term stability, long-term viability is friendlier in Latin America than it is in the EU. What does that say? What does Yara see about the long-term viability of the EU and why they would not be expanding there and favor Latin America instead? I'll leave it at that.
I get it.
Y'all discuss.
I get it. I get it.
Right.
And the long and short of it is that I highly doubt that President Bolsonaro is going to do a green energy initiative that shuts down natural gas and oil in Brazil. I highly doubt the man is going to do something like that, whereas in Norway, it is impossible to be green enough. I mean, I know the political situation in Norway. I mean, I'm even surprised at this point that you are even allowed to have a plant or a facility in Norway that even has anything to do with natural gas or oil right now. Because it ain't a wind turbine out in the North Sea.
Little Gazprom reference there.
Yeah.
DeMay, when you see this, I don't know. I start thinking about long-term implications of food security in Europe and all that fun stuff. Is Europe about to be so expensive that it's just impossible to inhabit it?
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. There is that, what this signals is, follow the money, right? You're gonna have less raw materials, so you're less profitable, potentially less productive in that space, right? From a point of view of Yara. And I mean, that's a huge signal, I would think, to say that, hey, we don't think that, one, we can get the raw materials to make the product, and two, we're not sure that there's going to be the demand there either at the price point or that there's going to be buyers in the marketplace in such numbers that are going to support our business here, right? So what's that mean? That means that we're probably growing less food in the European continent, right? Number one. Number two, as Ray said, there's a shift away, right, from using natural gas for things other than heating and storing that for reserves and things like that, because everybody's trying to cut Russia off, which is sort of an old other topic.
It has nothing to do with cutting off Russia. It has nothing to do with cutting. It's more to do with an environmental mandate that has been in the works long before Putin is having the shenanigans in the Ukraine right now. This is long before, because you see this whole plan to, cut off civilization from fossil fuels. This has been part of the plan for years now, and it's just that it's a matter of bad timing in that Europe is, not taking gas from the Soviet Union or Russia anymore, because what that means is that now with them unable to take the gas from Russia, then the certain sector politically has now seized on it and said, see, this is why fossil fuels are bad. Time to go back to the Stone Age.
Well, and I think what represents in Latin America is that if you look there, from Mexico all the way down to South America, natural gas as a whole has been expanding its footprint and foothold as part of the energy matrix down there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It looks to become the dominant energy production measure, right? Over several other ones that exist depending on where you're at in Latin America. So the point is that you've got regulatory and political climates that are very amenable to not only using and exploiting what they currently have online, but adding more, right? Adding more capacity, capability. So yeah, I don't blame Yara for doing this, and I think too from a cropping perspective, you're going to see that shift. So hey, I think we read an article about this several months ago where they were talking about if it's too expensive to grow in Europe, they're asking the European farmers are asking that there be tariffs placed on crops coming from South America because they won't be able to compete. Well, this is a pretty big chip that's being played right now in that storyline coming to reality.
It's not only about the production aspect. It is also true. Again, about all of the environmental mandates. And what's going to happen is essentially Europe has gone full virtue signal.
Well,
okay,
let's be honest too. Let's get real spicy here. Where is it easier to buy off some politicians and kill some people if you don't agree with them?
Actually, true.
I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying, read the newspaper.
However, true story. You know how I'm forever broken up about how pineapple production left Hawaii? Guess where they're growing all the pineapple now? Guess where they're growing it all?
Latin America? Brazil?
Brazil, yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, all the enviro weenies whined and cried enough that the pineapple producers said, fuck Hawaii, and all that production, like Dole and Del Monte pineapple, they're now in Brazil. So
Ray is still hot about it.
He's still hot about it. I think, Ray, there's a grassroots movement that we can start with all of the hot wife swapping spouses people, right, to bring pineapple production back to Hawaii. They need those things. They need them. So let's turn those people in favor of Hawaii. Let's bring it back. Let's onshore that pineapple production.
How did the pineapple fall into that category? I don't know.
I don't know. I bet you that there's some. Yeah. Well, next time,
I asked someone in that community if I could have the pineapple back, and he said you couldn't earn the pineapple back, something along the lines of that. And I was like,
what?
Okay,
What does that even mean?
But
What does that mean?
I don't know, and I was not going to ask questions. It freaked me out. Canada. Speaking of going full environmental force, Canada here. Let's really cause Ray's blood pressure to spike. Actually, this is pretty level-headed here. Saskatchewan producers asked federal government to measure fertilizer emissions by examining effective use. The Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, APAS, has officially submitted a number of comments to the federal government addressing concerns with the proposed fertilizer emission target for 2030, strongly advocating for an intensity-based approach to measuring emissions. The goal of the reduction is to reduce nitrous oxide emissions by 30% while maintaining yields and using less fertilizer, something APAS said is easier said than done for many producers. We have seen increased fertilizer use over the last number of years, but I also believe we have seen huge increase in production. When you look at the amount of nitrogen used per bushel of grain produced, that correlation would show we're getting good use out of fertilizer currently. Moving forward, he hopes through research from federal government that they can tell producers how to actually reduce emissions and keep production at current levels, with the world relying on Saskatchewan for food. We've got to ensure that producers understand that this is an emissions reduction, not a fertilizer reduction, said Boxall. We're at the forefront of the environment. We see it every day on our land and on our farms, and we care more than people give us credit for, and we will do whatever we can that's best for the environment. In the same token, we need to ensure that we continue to produce the products that need to be exported around the world. And then it goes on to say fertilizer use in Canadian farms has increased by 71%. Over the same period, fertilizer-related emissions of nitrous oxide in Canada increased by 54%. That's not exactly a one-to-one in line there. And I think the takeaway from that is this final line that it says right here. For Boxall, it's all about how the government works with producers to create a plan. And the part for me that really chaps my ass about this is that it takes this group here, APAS, the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, to beg the government to say, work with us to develop a plan. So what that leads me to believe is that they still do not know where this is coming from or how it's going to be implemented or where the reductions are going to come from, what they look like, what the yield contingency is going to be on the back end. It's still total mystery. And so the growers are like, okay, we'll play by your rules, but you got to work with us to develop these rules so we can understand what we're going to get on the back end of this. We want to be here for it. We want to help for it. We'd love to achieve this, but we can't figure out how it's going to happen. Can you please, someone, spell this out in terms that old farmer boy here can understand? And again, I'm reading between the lines here, and I could be totally off. But I've talked to enough people about this that they all kind of have the same mindset is, who the fuck is coming up with this? And it's got to be bright people. And if it is bright people, share the data. Show the data that's going to show this implemented at scale and what we can expect at scale. That's all.
You see, I think what it actually is divergent goals. Because as with a lot of environmental mandates, it is all about safety at all costs. Never mind the grower, never mind you and I. If you and I gotta starve to death, tough shit, because at the end of the day, all that matters is the environmental mandate was complied with. You see, these environmentalists, they don't care. They have this narrow focus on that nitrogen dioxide emission. They have this focus on fossil fuel consumption. They have this focus on
hang on, I want to interject and say I don't think it's just necessarily as simple as that they don't care. I think they're so blinded by the narrative or the dogma that they've bought into that they're not taking into consideration the long-term downstream effects of what this hard-lined policy could be. And you can explain it to them and say, look, you're putting food security at risk. And then there's the immediate talking point that the way they've been coached or that you read in the newspaper is that, well, we're either going to potentially put food security at risk or the planet is going to burn down. And I think that the storyline of that, if you don't do this, we're all going to die anyway, it creates so much exceptional fear in the mind of the extreme environmentalists that they don't see it as the long-term repercussions of it are blinded by the fact that we're all going to die anyway. Does that make sense? So I don't think their mindset is like, let's go out and intentionally kill people through starvation. I think the mindset is that we're going to have to get really tight out here. Otherwise, we're all going to burn up due to a failed climate, a climate that's going to run rampant, and then it's going to be natural disasters that kill us anyway. However, and which one is likely to get us there first? Is food security going to hurt us first, or is natural disaster going to kill us first? And I think the climate extremists right now are leaning towards the environment breaking down before we run out of food, because we're not going to be able to make the transition fast enough. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and what that that's been my thought all along, is that with a lot of these extremists, they are not even thinking about the idea that we do all of this, and as I always say almost every week, Matt, who is going to have to go without? Who decides who goes without, right?
And that's a fair question.
Yeah, and that's a very fair question that I never get a good answer to. And I have yet to have one of these activists or extremists look me in the eye, tell me straight to my face, okay, Ray, you're going to have to starve. I mean, I have yet to have a guy tell me that, or else I also have yet to have one of these extremists tell me you're going to have to live with pestilence and filth. Okay? I mean, I've yet to have one tell me that. And the other piece of this is that even this whole climate thing is not exactly settled science. So we're talking about creating massive social upheaval in the name of a theory, and a theory that is very tainted right now too.
DeMay, be a balanced perspective here. How much longer until I'm knocking at your door, starving to death, and you have to shoot me? You got to shoot me off the front porch because I'm a zombie.
I don't think I'll see that in my lifetime. I'll eat myself to death before that. Touche.
Oh no! No! Ew! Ew! God.
So, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, I think, that takes place on both sides of this argument. But right, you have to figure out who has more to gain, right, in the long term. And I think when you talk about this, it's like you said, we should also have the same goal. How do we balance out the issue of climate change, which I don't think anybody could say is settled science, right? But I think there's a lot of red flags there that point to, hey, we got to do something, right? And if we don't, who knows what happens? Maybe it goes bad, and if we do, it can't hurt. But if we do stuff like this, I think it will hurt. I think it will hurt to the point that we go so far, so fast, and again, that whole velocity of change argument, that we don't stop and look around and try to figure out what's going on and what is, the science and the results, telling us. So I think going back to that whole cognitive dissonance thing, it's like, if you say, hey, we've got to put these measures in place, right, to reduce emissions and do all this and that. Oh, okay, that's fine, but you got to work with this. Well, no, we're not going to do that. It's either this is the way we're doing it, or we're not doing it at all. And anybody who always says, "Hey, come pry it from my cold, dead fingers," that's not a way to argue or reason with somebody. It's just it's pretty shitty. I think that we can't have a substantive conversation without people digging their heels in on this. On the flip side, I think, this is a great article in the sense that the farmers are trying to come as a group and say, we want to work with you. We want to try and find a way, and we want to do this based on the results, right? How can we put down as little as possible but still be able to feed everybody? And again, on that side of it, you're still going to have holdouts. You're still going to have people that are stubborn and be like, I know better. I'm going to do it this way, whatever. I think that those folks can be controlled. I think on the other side of that, with the farmers, the people that would ante up and kick in there, it's like, wait, so you're gonna teach me how to use less inputs and grow the same amount of yield. Yeah, that makes sense. It not only from a social responsibility point of view, but more so from a business perspective, right? I want to do as little as I have to do to get the same results. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this goes. We'll put this on the shit list. We'll follow along with this. See what happens.
Yeah,
so, see, Matt,
Ryan,
You do love Canada.
That is always my question, is that with a lot of these mandates, for example, the presumption is that these growers are just using and abusing inputs to the massive detriment of the environment, where, my goodness, I've always known that every pound of fertilizer or herbicide has a cost associated with it. That shit ain't cheap. So I'm especially triggered with the idea that a grower would need to be told from on high, you need to cut back, when most of these growers, they already are using the minimum amount possible and still get the yields, because this shit's expensive. You know, this stuff is expensive.
Yeah.
It's not like they just throw it out willy-nilly and all is good. No, these guys are trying not to use more than they need to, because using more than they need to cuts into their bottom line, their profit per acre.
Yeah, and exactly like DeMay said, we'll keep a close eye on this and see. And right now, it sounds like the government trying to control people rather than the government working with people, and that's going to create people digging their heels in, because there has to be some free choice employed in this, and some data to go behind to help encourage people to exercise their free choice. And until that's shared and shown and demonstrated, it's just going to be a continuous level of FU, no FU, back and forth. Some good news is that a University of California Riverside researcher has identified some really, really drought-tolerant Bermuda grass. Let's see here. We are, I was scrolling a little too far down there. Here we go. The cheerleader for public enemy number one greeted me at the gates to UC Riverside's agricultural experiment station with a smile and some choice words. Every time there's a serious drought, I'm in the LA Times, Jim Baird said, only half jokingly. Why is it always a knee-jerk reaction? When it's not a drought, I don't hear from you guys. I don't hear from the water agencies. Then we go through our wasteful ways. Lawns, you're the bad guys, everyone then says. The tall, skinny, loquacious Baird is the head of UC Riverside's turfgrass research and extension program devoted to the study of growing and maintaining lawns. He's the only such faculty member of the University of California system, which makes him the state's Mark Twain of turf, our LeBron of lawns, the Ira of grass. I asked to meet with Baird at his workplace to see how he was weathering these times. As California and the American West suffer through the worst dry spell in a millennium, the municipalities are offering residents to let their grass die of thirst or rip it out altogether. A lawn evangelist like Baird seems as heretical a sight in Los Angeles as the Angels hat at Dodger Stadium. Baird was not only unapologetic, but was more than happy to clap back at the haters. It's not the grass fault, to continue, his words rapid and passionate. People waste water. Government officials tell the public to water their lawns once a week. People then water for hours at a time and waste far more than they would have if they were left alone. You want to cut water use? Raise the prices. Educate. It's amazing how little is conveyed to the homeowner. Instead, it's all about we need to police you. Oh, spicy take.
Yes.
And so then he goes on to have identified drought tolerant to the point that it needs 50% less than water than most lawns in Southern California. Soft enough to use for recreation. Attractive enough for customers want to buy. Keeps a healthy green tone during the winter and when most other lawns go dormant. If we can get the state to have John, lawn owner, get paid to take out his current grass and use one of ours, he let the thought linger. Don't tell me that our grasses are water pigs. Don't tell me that we can't compete in that arena. Baird's grass cultivars, right now named UCR 17-8 and UCR TP6-3, were selected from more than 400 hybrids. The plot before us was planted last year as a final exam of sorts before Baird felt confident enough to hit the publicity trail. It's time for a close-up. And then it goes on and on and on. He has looked at all kinds of different turf grasses, everything from Georgia grass to warm season to cool season, and he's starting to feel good about some of the things that are coming out. So, if there's a will, there's a way, and I don't. There's something about Baird here that is just really, really inspiring, and I hope the rest of the turfgrass breeders are able to take something from here, because this is exactly what's going to be what has to be developed in our industry if we're going to continue to move forward, because the drought of the West, even if it does correct, it'll shift somewhere else. And then, we'll have to employ the same things they employed there to be able to survive it, right? And if we're behind the times on that, they're going to continue, exactly like he says here, show up and say, the lawns are the bad guys, you're the bad guys, and the government's going to feel the need to police their way through it instead of trying to develop their way through it, right? So, I don't know. I think this is fantastic stuff here.
So, hey, JP, go ahead and throw that tweet up real quick. And let's take a look at these two bad boys. This is from Jim's Twitter feed. This is UCR turf breeding on Twitter. So the two different varieties, the UCR 17-8 and the UCR TP 6-3, you'll see these left and right. So this is, if you're listening on audio, you can't see this, but this is plots of a whole bunch of different varieties, experimental and named varieties, right, where they're doing drought research on these. So 37 days with 0 water, and the two plots that we're looking at of the two experimentals that are going to be released here by UC Riverside look pretty damn good. And just for reference here, Ray, in the back, on the photo on the right, you got the Tifway 2 has the knife sticking out of it, and
Yes.
I wouldn't say it's dead yet, but we're coffin shopping right now. We're out there.
You know what? Ryan, I just call that Tifway 2 in what I call commercially unacceptable condition. Okay? Whereas the UCR, I could take that.
Mhm.
I mean, I could imagine having that in somebody's front lawn. Whereas the Tifway 2, not so much.
Mhm.
I mean, it's and by the way, I have experience with how drought resistant Bermuda grass actually is. I have some experience with it because at home, I used to maintain a stand of TIF 328, only irrigating 1 time a week.
Mm-hmm. And one thing to point out here too, from a breeding perspective, is some people, especially on the tubes, will use these two terms interchangeably. They would talk about drought tolerance and drought resistance, right? Tolerance just means that under drought conditions, how long will it last before it just totally croaks, and how well can it come back and recover, right? Drought resistance is what we saw in that photo, where there is no water, right, and we're resisting drought conditions. Okay.
It's funny you
So-
should mention that, Matt. I mean, it's funny you should mention that, Ryan, because I hear the horse shit pulled about Zoysia to me all the time. Oh, it is so drought tolerant. But then here's the reality. A couple days without water, and that Zoysia starts to look like that Bermuda with the pocket knife sticking out of it. Is
There
that
you go.
commercially acceptable to you, Ryan? Would that be commercially
No, it's not.
acceptable?
No.
And so I hear it where, yeah, it'll green back.
It sounded like the government came and clipped Ray there, which after the first 2 articles there, I could see that definitely happening. One more thing to get to in the headlines before we move on to Joe Knows Turf, and that is Monsanto won a verdict in St. Louis County Roundup trial. So this is this is where it gets interesting, right? Because Monsanto has, Monsanto Bayer has put aside billions of dollars to settle this, and but now they've won one, and if one is going to be won, I would say this might be the catalyst to see some of these huge losses of Bayer begin to subside. So I don't know, something to keep our eye on, and we'll see how it plays out. Ryan, because I know you've invested so much time into this, how about we check out this week's Joe Knows Turf?
Joe Knows Turf. Hi, I'm Joe. I'm gonna give you a bunch of accurate turf facts today because Joe knows turf.
Yes, he does, and we have a doozy this week. So let's check out what we got. And I see a mountain of evidence over here to reiterate what's going to be talked about. So how about you walk us through?
Yeah, and you're right. Joe does know turf, and thank you to him. If you're just joining the program, haven't seen this before, we basically take this segment to break down some piece of content, either from social media, YouTube, something like that, and watch it and just see how accurate it is and try to give our perspective and lean in a little bit and do it in our own fun. And Matt, what would you say that is a constructively criticizing way, right?
100%.
Oh yeah. Matt might go full David Goggins, but that's irrelevant. So all right,
It's tough love.
Maybe.
Tough love.
yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough love. I'm coaching you hard because I love you. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and watch this video that was sent to me earlier this week, and let's dive in about the subject of late season fertilization on cool season grasses.
One of these lawns have done the same thing every fall, every year, and it's not overseeding. Can you imagine having one of these lawns as your own? Having family and friends over on this lawn? Having your neighbors spark conversations because they need to know how you went from this to this? Because you absolutely can by doing a fall nitrogen blitz. These are messages I received from subscribers who followed my advice last year of using the fall nitrogen blitz instead of overseeding.
Pause. Okay, so a little bit of a backstory here. The fall nitrogen blitz, as he calls it, is not a name of his own invention. This term was actually coined, I believe, by our good friend Andy, the wizard, over there on the old AroundTheYard.com forums way back when, before the lawn forum existed. And John Ware.
Did I say that out loud?
You know,
I thought I hit the mute button.
No, you missed it actually. But anyway, the way this all came to be was that if you didn't know him and didn't understand the website, Andy was sort of like the Iron Fist, and what he said went, and that was sort of how it was. So he would embark on this this blitz, as he called it, to apply copious amounts of fertilizer towards the end of the year. Now, part of it was billed as, in keeping with some of the current research that had been done. There's a lot of work going back, all the way back into the late 60s up through the mid 80s, late 80s, where they examined the topic of, hey, can we put out, larger applications of nitrogen later into the year, say like September, October, even into November, and have good results in terms of turf quality. So let's go ahead and continue to watch our friend here, Lawn Life, I believe his name is here.
Some of you are probably wondering by now, what is a fall nitrogen blitz and why should I do this instead of overseeding? The fall nitrogen blitz is a fall nitrogen plan that professionals have used for decades to keep golf courses, athletic fields, and home lawns looking great for the rest of the current growing season as well as the following year. During the summer months, our grass has gone through a ton of stress with all of the heat and drought it has endured, and once temperatures start to drop again, your grass will start to bounce back and want to recover. During this time is when we should definitely be hitting it with nitrogen to help it thicken up, recover, and store its food supply for next year. For cool season lawns, when the air temps start to drop below 80 degrees, you know it's go time to start the nitrogen blitz. With this nitrogen plan, we will be spoon feeding our lawns 0.5 pounds of fast release nitrogen per 1,000 square feet every 2 weeks for the rest of the growing season.
Zapow!
Do it every week if you have a really thin lawn. By doing this, we will be thickening up our lawn and giving roots a food supply to store as carbs for the winter, which means a faster spring green up and a healthier lawn coming out of winter next year. But there's definitely
Okay. Wait, I'm sorry. There's a little bit left. Let's go ahead and let him finish that part.
catch.
I apologize.
You better be prepared to start mowing. A lot. but trust me, it's going to be worth it. So
All right,
why
this is
the
the part I
fall
want to watch here. One more. So before we get to this part here, the whole golf course's athletic field professional thing. Matt, can you educate me as to how much did you sell the fall nitrogen blitz program to your tall fescue customers when you were in lawn care? What was that plan?
How
What
often
did
I sell it?
Yeah. What was
it? It was $173,000 a fall. That was what I sold it for.
So let me guess. Nobody ever took you up on it.
No, I'm going to be fair here. I never offered it either. I just
listen.
I didn't.
That and ladies and gentlemen, that and many other things were off the menu with Matt Martin when he came to your house to treat your lawn.
DeMay, I didn't sell it on the bent grass either. Like I didn't do it.
So again, so here I just want to clarify this piece is that from a standpoint of professionals doing this, they do it in a much, much, much different way, and especially when it comes to cool season grasses and how late that we're going to talk about doing this. I think it'll be interesting. We'll get into that here towards the end of the video. So I want to hear the answer to this question. Why the nitrogen blitz instead of overseeding? Let's hear this answer, and then Matt, I'd like to dive into this just a little bit before we talk about the technical whiteboard stuff.
Instead of overseeding. For one, it's much cheaper and a lot less work to do the fall nitrogen blitz rather than overseeding your entire lawn. Also, when overseeding, it takes multiple seasons for that grass to eventually mature into a strong, healthy strand of turf. With the fall nitrogen blitz, we'll be using your already mature grass and basically pumping it with steroids for a fraction of the cost of overseeding. If you overseed
Matt, would you consider eating a balanced diet of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates to be consuming steroids? And I trust to ask you on this subject because you are my subject matter expert on personal health.
No.
So the basic building blocks, the shit that you need to survive, you would not consider steroids.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. All right, so here's the issue: is
hashtag fake natty.
Hashtag fake natty. Yeah. Hey, what's the cost to paint your lawn versus do all this nitrogen shit? Come on, let's just do that, right? All right.
Just actually get on steroids. I don't know.
Let me ask you this, Matt: is how does it land with you? And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer here for every single situation, but to not use and utilize some of the newer genetics that we have available to us, as opposed to taking what might be a lawn that was overseeded with good varieties a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever, or just a dog shit lawn, right? That's really thin, sparse, doesn't look good, and pumping it with a whole bunch of nitrogen.
Wait, repeat that question. What did you just ask me?
Why in what cases would we want to go and use superior genetics in place of just a nitrogen program? Why is it so oversimplified? We would rather do that
10 out of 10 times. That makes the most sense because oftentimes, while it may, and again, I would have to work out the economics on this. With the cost of nitrogen of where it's at right now, applying a pound of nitrogen every other week or a pound of nitrogen a month is likely not that much cheaper than going out with an overseed rate of seed, right? Your cost of acquisition may be higher on the front end, but as you work it all out through the end of the season, your price difference is probably not that extreme. Second of all is that the long-term return on investment of using better genetics, which oftentimes require fewer inputs, lower management, lower pesticide inputs, is going to work out in your favor as well. So, and then there's a big gaping hole in this whole thing that I'm feeling a little bit crazy about, DeMay, and tell me is this does not apply to all grass types. This does not apply to all cool season grass types. Am I skipping some caveats here? Because when I'm thinking of overseeding, and what I think he's talking about, as far as the grass type of stop overseeding and employ this, he's left out a key caveat to where this applies and where it doesn't apply.
Correct. So I think what you're trying to say is if I have a fine fescue or predominantly fine fescue lawn, for example, this would not be a very good idea, right? So again, we're oversimplifying a little bit on not being specific about grass types and areas of the country, things like that. So
if you had a tall fescue lawn,
yeah,
this probably
not
would
great.
not apply.
Not great. So JPink, go ahead and throw up this link real quick. And this is not to show for anybody. We don't sell seed. This is the Alliance for Low Input Sustainable Turf. It's a co-op or a group of co-op growers of seed that come together and they put this through university testing at 4 different sites. I know Rutgers, Purdue, and forgive me if you scroll all the way to the bottom, JPink, I think it's got the other 2 sites on there where they show where they're doing and where they're going. Maybe not. It's on the website there. Check it out, LCS Turf. And Matt, what they do here is basically they're cutting the water down, I believe, to almost it might be 60% ET. The whole protocol is actually on their website. It's pretty good. As far as fertility goes, though, they do this as a 2-year trial, right? So they establish, and then they get 1.5 pounds the first year, 1 pound the second year, and that's it, right? So trying to grow these, and then basically the ones that pass muster in terms of how they look, from a turf quality standpoint, how they do on disease, insect resistance, all that kind of stuff, is what you see here on these lists. So you've got different varieties or different cultivars here within each species that they're saying can be maintained at a significantly lower level of fertility and still look great, right, relative to what else is out there in the marketplace. So again, this is only a voluntary thing. You've got several of the biggest seed growers, though: Seed Research of Oregon, DLF Pick Seed, Mountain View, Landmark Turf and Native, and Lebanon Turf, who distributes a lot of seed as well. So some pretty good companies in there. All right, JPink, let's go jump to those last 4 chapters of the video real quick, and let's see how this kind of ends up here.
Because both urea and ammonium sulfate have such concentrated amounts of nitrogen in each prill, it makes things very difficult to spread across your lawn. In a perfect world, we'd be able to dissolve these fertilizers into liquid form and put it down in a backpack sprayer to get uniform coverage. But because we want to put down a lot of nitrogen at once, we just can't do that without burning our lawn or watering it in right away. So the best way that I've found to put these products down is to use a hand spreader with urea and a normal granular spreader with ammonium sulfate. You'll want to use close to the lowest setting on each of these spreaders and just go over your lawn multiple times in multiple different directions. This may seem like a lot more work than that's actually needed, but you'll definitely get the best coverage by doing it this way.
Pause. Okay. I just want to go ahead and refute that properly calibrating your spreader rather than running it all out over a given area and hoping it all evens up and everything like that. We got to do better than that.
It just chaps my ass. And let's explain why that's a bad thing. Is if you're just setting it to the point where it dribbles out, how are you ensuring uniform coverage, right? And what I mean by uniform coverage is to say you make a pass across the yard. You still got material left over. You alternate directions. You go the other way. And you make 2 passes of the 10 you need to get down the an entire coverage of that area that you're treating. But you only are able to get 2 passes down. Well, you've got down the rate you needed across the entire lawn, but you did not get it down evenly. You got down half the rate or a percentage of the rate across the whole thing, and then you got down an additional percentage of rate across 2 passes of your backyard or front yard or whatever area it is you're treating. So the point is that you do not have even coverage that way, and that's not a way to guarantee even coverage, and it paints the picture of the necessity of using precisely calibrated equipment, because that is bad advice.
Agreed. We can do better with this, especially if we're applying this much fertilizer. All right.
I promise you, pros do not do that. Okay.
Go on with your bad self.
Or any of this.
One of the most frequent questions I get about the fall nitrogen blitz is how much fertilizer do I need to put down and how do I calculate it? I recommend putting down 0.5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet every 2 weeks if you have a decent to good looking lawn. If your lawn's in really rough shape, I'd recommend throwing it down every week.
Pause.
Now that doesn't mean put down 0.5.
So again, just to clarify that, 0.5 pounds of actual nitrogen every 2 weeks if you have a quote-unquote good to decent lawn. And if you have a thin lawn, that's to be 0.5 pounds of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per week. All right, let's play it here. Let's continue on the timing piece.
5 pounds of product per 1,000 square feet. That's just how much nitrogen we want to put down. To calculate actual pounds on the ground, we're going to use a simple calculation. Say we want to put down 0.5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet of ammonium sulfate. What we're going to do is we're going to divide 0.5 by the nitrogen content in that bag. Since ammonium sulfate is a 2100, that means it's 21% nitrogen. So we're going to divide 0.5 divided by 0.21, and that's going to give us 2.38 pounds of product we need per 1,000 square feet.
That's actually good stuff. Good way to show it.
If we have a 6,000 square foot lawn, we need to multiply 2.38 times 6. And that's going to give us 14.28 pounds, which we need to spread over the lawn evenly. As soon as I notice my grass is done growing for the season, I stop the fall nitrogen blitz. There's no need to put down more on after this. The grass should have everything it needs to come back crazy strong in the spring and have a great green up. And what's even crazier is that even by putting down this much nitrogen, you can still get your grass much darker green. All you have to do is follow the steps I give you in this video right here.
Man, that's the part you cannot leave. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
That?
I don't know where that came from.
That was Ray.
That's
Ray,
Ray.
you're sending us noise.
Ray's in the air raid shelter right now.
Ray's in a truck.
Cover your head.
There's something specific about that. Okay, so he said when the grass stops growing, stop applying. Okay. Here's the problem: is that I am cutting grass here in East Tennessee until Christmas because it is still growing until Christmas. I may be cutting every 10 days at Christmas, and really, it could stand a cut or two probably into January. If that is the case, I'm going to be somewhere 4.5 pounds of nitrogen in the fall. Why, DeMay? Why?
I don't know. So let's start here and let's understand what we're talking about here. So we've talked about what Lawn Life and the 54 or so thousand people that watched that video so far in the last 4 days, which is frightening. That part to me is frightening. That this is
that's bad.
That's getting that kind of reach. Okay, so let's talk about this from a scientific. This is going to be whiteboardish, Matt. We'll go through this together. All right, we're going to get through it. So typical growth curve here on a cool season grass, right? We go into fall time, we're getting significantly higher shoot growth than we have all summer. We all know that, right? Not quite as much as what we would get in the spring, but it's certainly chooching pretty good. Also getting a lot of root growth at this time too. So you can see here as we go into November, December, this sort of tails off a little bit as we transition towards about Thanksgiving time. Top growth sort of ceases. Root growth is still taking place at this time, right? And so this has always been what people have said is like, you want to make that late season application, as late as you possibly can. And that was sort of the professional method of doing this was, hey, go out there about Thanksgiving, Matt, even down by you near Christmas, right? Make that last big slug of nitrogen go out, and you'll have a green lawn all winter and a green lawn next spring, okay? So a couple of things have happened here in the ensuing time since the late 60s when this whole thing came out and was made dogma within the industry, okay? The first thing that took place was Michigan State. A guy by the name of Kevin Frank did a ton of research that was established even before he got to Michigan State, where they basically have lawn plots that are out there at the research center that were established back in the very early 90s, like between 89 and 91. And they put lysimeters in the ground. Lysimeter is just kind of like a big cylinder that sits down inside the soil and catches leachate, anything that comes through there, so that they can measure it and doesn't go all the way down into the ground, okay? So these studies have been out there now. I think they're actually still going, but they wrote a report on this to look at Kentucky bluegrass lawns in particular and the fate of nutrients that are applied to those, right? They did a couple different ways here. And J Pink, go ahead and throw up, let me see here. That is going to be the first picture I sent you here.
The green
Throw
chart.
that little table up, the green chart, and we'll take a look at this one here. So they had two different runs that they were doing here between a high rate and a low rate. High rate for the first 5 years of the study was 5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year. The low rate was 2 pounds. So you can see here, these are our lysimeter numbers, what they're picking up in the terms of nitrate in the water. Once we get into like year 3 and upwards of year 4 and 5 on those high rates, we're getting rates of nitrate in the water and the leachate here that are far above what are allowable for us to even have, right? So they made the decision in 2003, after 2003, that they needed to back that down. So you'll see that the data here, we go from 25 parts per million, 30 parts per million in 2002, 2003, and they cut that rate down to 4 pounds as the ceiling, as the high rate, and it immediately started to drop. All the while, you know, the high that we've ever had, highest we've ever had here on the low rate is about 2 pounds per, or excuse me, 2 parts per million, all the way up to about 6 parts per million. So the point being here is that in a mature lawn, we need less nitrogen for it to actually work right and not leach. Okay, so they're getting good acceptable turf quality even on the low rate, but we have far less in leachate that's coming out of here. Okay, so that's slide number 1 there. Now let's go ahead over here and talk about Matt, our not our good friend, but we certainly do admire Doug Soldat up at the University of Wisconsin. Who this is actually still from Kevin Frank's work, but we'll take a look at this real quick. Interesting here is that this is them sampling each individual part of the plant, right? So clippings, verdure, thatch, roots, soil, and leachate. So they're looking at the entire system here. And if you take the average of all of their 15 years of data, you'll notice that we're recovering less total nitrogen out of the high rate than we are out of the low rate, which means our low rate plots are using the nitrogen more efficiently, right? And if you go look at that too, we've still got more captured in soil. We've got less in roots, but we've got more up here inside of our plants and less in the leachate. So all things considered, I think we're showing that in a long-term study that less nitrogen, especially in mature lawns, not necessarily in new lawns, but in, I think they said the breaking point here, the Michigan State study was about 10 years, okay? So let's jump over here to Soldat stuff. And the thing we want to look at there, J-Ping, is let's start with that chart that says ET for Madison, Wisconsin. So Doug Soldat and his team up at Wisconsin said, hey, you know what? Why is this like this? Why do we do this big late season push for nitrogen? And is there any reason behind the madness, right? We've seen some work that suggests that, you know, as we get later in the season, nitrogen use does not become any better. So why would we put more down later in the season? So when they go to examine this, here's what they find out is that, you know, we've known for as long as turfgrass science has been a thing, that the way that nitrogen enters the plant is through a process called mass flow, which means water goes in through the roots and it gets taken up and used by the plant. That's about how 90+% of the nitrogen gets in the plant. That all being said, as we go through the fall time here, and this is what this is showing, is how much water is actually being used by the plant as it dries down from the soil and as it transpires water and uses it in there. So what we find here, Matt and Ray, is that this application that's made on 9/15 as compared to, I think they made their second one on October 15th and then again on November 15th. We had a loss, okay? We took about 80% of the nitrogen up in the September app. We took about 19% of the nitrogen up in the October app, and we took about 11% of the nitrogen up in that November app. So we went from 80, and in 2 months' time, in Madison, Wisconsin, we went all the way down to 11%. So this whole idea that, hey, if we're going to just keep pumping out a half pound, where's it going? Kevin Frank's already answered where it's going. It's going in the ground, boys. It ain't going to the plant, and it's not coming back the next year, because the interesting thing here that Dr. Soldat and his team did was they said, hey, let's just make sure that this stuff's not hanging around until like next spring, that it's not somehow, just leaching out and it's gone. That's what we think is happening, but let's just check. They did, and they had single digits of stuff that was captured that following spring. So the point here being is that this fall nitrogen blitz is a made-up thing. It's made up by somebody who didn't understand the science behind it to start. It was been perpetuated by people that say, hey, if I put more fertilizer down, my grass gets greener. Well, no shit, Sherlock. That's what's going to happen.
Up to a
But
point.
at what point? At what point
Yeah.
are you doing this? At what point are you doing this and causing harm and wreaking havoc, right? If you're on the, what was that term, Matt? The nitrogen terror train?
Yes, that was what I read.
That's
The
direct.
nitrogen terror train.
So yeah, for the people that think that they need to have some type of, and maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but people that want to have a nice lawn and do this in the fall, how would they do this? Simply put, and if you follow what Dr. Soldat and his research team will say, is go out sometime if you're in a cool season area here in the Midwest, the Northeast, throw out a half a pound of nitrogen, and if you want to put a little bit of it slow release up to 50%, go for it. But that's really all you need. Everything else will take care of itself, and you'll be fine. If you want to get real particular about it, you can spoon feed. I think as the gentleman here suggested, spray it, spoon feed it out, but reduce your rates and increase your frequencies a little bit. Decrease your frequencies a little bit as we go further and further into the year as the plant is taking up less and less nitrogen. So, all that to say, hopefully this was put out in good taste of trying to help people out. I think it overgeneralized way too much. It's another symptom of this oversimplification of lawn care that, hey, paint it with a broad brush and big enough brush, and you'll get a whole lot of views and everything like that. And if you want to have, pretty stripes and dark colors and, flex your big dick energy out there in the lawn, fucking great. But please stop doing it in the wrong way and follow the science. Thank you very much. This has been your edition of this week's Joe Knows Turf.
That was incredible, and I hope everyone that watches this, that subscribes to that idea of a fall nitrogen blitz, takes into consideration everything that was put forth there. Gentlemen, we are way over time, so we're going to have to do a shortened segment of this week's burns and returns. But let's go ahead and take a look at this week's burns. Yes,
She was up there quickly.
Yeah.
She was up there
Boy,
quickly.
had a lot to say there, didn't she? I was like, listen, you sometimes you just need to calm down, take a chill pill, relax. My goodness, she's yelling at me.
All right.
In Ohio, why this is a burn is going to be a little bit funny here, but Tdougiefresh currently held a celebratory groundbreaking to mark the commencement of construction on a new liquid fertilizer facility in Defiance, Ohio. The 50,000 square foot production facility will occupy 50 acres and is set to become operational in 2024. This is good. This is a good thing. However, what's going to be coming out of here are going to be things like thiosol, potassium thiosulfate, KRO23, as well as sulfite chemistries for the industrial market. For those of you that don't know why this is a problem, is that it's not going to help anybody in lawn care. In ag, they're going to be able to get away with this for drilling it purposes. However, if you're in lawn care and this is being forced down your throat, I'm going to warn you right now that if a company's forcing this down your throat for lawn care, they are probably not interested in your success. The reason why is that a lot of these materials are so caustic in nature that it's really, really, really easy to burn. See, the word I'm looking for there would be like salt index or something of the sort. Although they do have an acidifying effect, which specifically for Ohio would be good. So this makes sense that it would be good and well situated in Ohio. What doesn't make sense is that oftentimes this is pushed on lawn care as if it's something that's applicable when most of the time it's not. I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but most of the time it's not. The second thing is that oftentimes KTS, potassium thiosulfate, ammonium thiosulfate is all going to be a byproduct of the production of acetaminophen. And so it's amazing to me that there are companies that are able to build and flourish in this, just selling the waste product of acetaminophen production when, we all know they have just about $0 invested in it. So anyway, that's why that is a burn. I don't know if I should have let out that much at the end there, but I did.
Hey, let them live. We'll let them live for now. All right, moving on.
Boy. The second one here is sludge containing forever chemicals promoted for home gardens. Boys, it's just, we're never going to get away from it, are we? I mean, it is, but you know what? Other people are catching on. And so again, we'll just go on here. Bags of the earthy muck. Oh, golly. Why does this always do this to me? Here, let me open it in this window. The bags of the earthy muck are labeled organic or natural. Sometimes it is billed as exceptional quality compost. Industry held a nationwide contest years ago and decided to call it biosolids, a euphemism that beat out black gold, geoslime, and humanure. No matter how it's described, the humus-like material distributed to gardeners, neighborhood groups, and landscapers by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District is still sewage sludge, a byproduct of human excrement, industrial waste from Chicago and the Cook County suburbs. Gardeners are encouraged to grow vegetables and leafy greens in the sludge-based compost. District officials promote the truckloads they donate to community gardens in low-income or predominantly black neighborhoods, and the piles they leave outside sewage treatment plants are for anyone to shovel into buckets or their pickup beds. People collect free compost from the Stickney Water Reclamation Plant on May 17th, 2022, according to a little picture here that I can't see because I'm doing this. However, when it comes to find out that these have PFAS in them for the most part. And so it goes on to talk about this. MWRD scientists are among the authors of a 2011 study that worrisome levels of forever chemicals in the district sludge, along with EPA researchers participated in the 2013 tomato and lettuce study. Despite the use of scientific jargon and industry legal throughout the letter paper, the conclusion is clearly stated. These results may have important implications in respect to the potential routes of PFAS exposure to humans who might have repeatedly used sludge to fertilize their home gardens. So there's no regulatory guidance on this. It's really unknown, and the thing is that we don't have all the data we need, and I don't mean from the standpoint data we need as far as like human health concerns. We don't have the data we need to have real time, whether it's monthly testing or whatever the case may be, to allow us to make the kind of decisions we need. Again, I would encourage anybody that's using biosolids out there. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Go to whoever supplies you your biosolids, whether that be a distributor like one of the big boys, or it be a small regional distributor, or you buy direct from one of these wastewater treatment facilities, and ask them to show you the data, exactly how much is in it, and how contaminated with PFAS are these biosolids that I'm applying. And then you have to take into account how many you have applied and whether you're going to continue doing it or not, because this is a long-term problem that we're not going to be able to get our way out of simply by just pretending like it doesn't exist. DeMay, I want to bring this up to you here, is that one of our patrons actually did reach out to their supplier and asked about this.
Oh, really?
Yes, and the supplier said basically it's nothing you need to be concerned
about. Wait, is this like the cigarette companies, the tobacco companies in the 60s and 70s? Oh no, you can't get addicted to it, and it's fine. Hell, doctors do it, right? It can't be that bad for you. I don't know. I just think if you're not recognizing the groundswell that's taking place right now, don't get caught flat-footed. Get this stuff out, and not because we're raging environmentalists. I agree that if I knew that something like this even was a possibility, I'd want to distance myself from that pretty darn quickly.
Just get out in front of it, whether you agree with it or not. I promise you, the further out in front of it you are, the better off you're going to be, because you can make educated decisions while you're out there. And whatever decision you decide to make, you can feel good about supporting. Whether that means you continue to use it or you don't continue to use it, you are at least armed with the data to be able to say why. The $1 billion effort to fight African hunger put farmers in debt and poisons the soil, critics say. All right, and this gets kind of spicy here, but I figure we go ahead and at least touch on it. $1 billion philanthropic effort promising a green revolution for African agriculture has fallen far short of its goals, according to critics who say the project has yielded more harm than good for local farmers and crops. The AGRA, also known as the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, launched in 2006 largely through funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, is facing backlash from environmental activists and farmers for alleged industrial practices that have released poisonous chemicals into the soil and put some farmers in debt by requiring costly seeds, pesticides, and fertilizers, per the Seattle Times. The controversial implementations, which have reportedly resulted in some indebted farmers selling their land and belongings as well as committing suicide, were termed the second phase of colonization by Kenyan ecologist activist Celestine Otieno. AGRA, co-founded by the Rockefeller Foundation, aims to reduce hunger and increase agricultural productivity by planting high-yielding seeds, using chemical fertilizers, and promoting new environmental research methods across Africa, according to the outlet. The alliance this week will begin a rebranding campaign amid increased scrutiny following a donor-funded evaluation in December 2021 that found the project did not meet its headline goal of increased incomes and food security. Changes will include AGRA's official title no longer using the term Green Revolution, a decades-old movement implemented in multiple countries to mix successes and failures, according to the Seattle Times. Among the benefits of AGRA found in December evaluations were higher-yielding corn crops across roughly half the countries analyzed. Additionally, AGRA President Agnes Calabata said the project has helped upwards of 800 Africans earn master's and doctorate degrees in agriculture, as reported by the outlet. However, Calabata and other project leaders have credited climate change as the main reason the initiative has thus far fallen short, as well as many have struggled to combat the impacts of consecutive drought seasons that were severely harmed farms without access to irrigation systems. In Africa today, the majority of counties are already living in 1 degree warmer world. And then it goes on and on and on. I'll read this last little bit here. Panelists criticize AGRA staff and board of directors, whose members include prominent African leaders such as former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, alleging that corporations that sell seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides farmers rely on annually are the ones truly running the show. When will you stop pushing for these green revolution models that have failed? A national coordinator for the Biodiversity and Biosafety Association in Kenya during the conference. All right. Now, there's a lot to kind of unpack here, and there's a lot to read between the lines, right? Because on one instance, you've got the hardcore environmentalists that say anything that ends in "cul" as in chemical, or anything that ends in "cide" as in pesticide, or anything that ends in "zer" as in fertilizer is inherently bad, right? And I do not believe that the AGRA, even though it was, if they're going to point at this and say the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is trying to kill the environment, I don't think so. I think they are legitimately interested in broadening the scope of agricultural education that occurs in Africa, and I think that's actually a wonderful thing that has taken place there, to expose more Africans to the types of agricultural methods that have allowed us to thrive and prosper for a population of how many billions of people we have on the planet now. And for these people that are pretending like what's going on is for the most part bad, what they need to remember is that if we simply fertilized with manure or waste streams alone, we could only feed 4 billion people. That's it. Just 4 billion people. And somehow we've managed to feed, 9 billion people? And that's not by accident. That's through the methods that are likely being taught to the Africans that are participating in this program. So to point at it and say that it's inherently bad is, in my opinion, very short-sighted and a terrible take. I think that's just a shitty take. Now, if you want to say that money's been mismanaged, it hasn't been applied appropriately, it's too fat at the top, okay, probably. Without a doubt, if that's believed to be occurring, it's probably occurring. But I don't think that points at this as a program and makes it of the devil. Am I talking crazy, or does that make sense?
No, it is. I just think I think we're in this space right now that this is the other side of this, right? Is that let's mash up a previous article with what we were talking about with Canada and Europe and South America with Africa, right? And they're so far behind on the traditional methods, right? How are we going to, how do we merge and skip ahead, several chapters and go from, what little knowledge, infrastructure, everything like that they do have, right, in a relative basis, right, to hey, now you're going to be, there's just a lot of stuff that's got to happen, man. And I don't know, this part of it where, what are we teaching and how is this stuff that they're going to need to forget in 10 years? And are we right back in the same place when we figure out maybe that some of the stuff that we're teaching them, oh man, that's really bad. Like, we're not doing that in Canada. We're not doing that in North America, South America, Europe anymore. But here for the last 10 years, we've been teaching dogma and bullshit to people in Africa, and now we got to start all over again. So that whole part of it, the political, the greasing of hands and kickback, like, you can't tell me that shit's not happening. I'm just sorry. Maybe I am
It's
being
happening.
too,
It's happening.
Exactly. So take it for what it's worth. It looks pretty in paper, and it'll probably be a burn for a good long while. So you just put a new log on the fire, Matt. We'll see how long it burns for.
I was going to say, if anybody's here to talk shit about it, that's definitely us. We will armchair quarterback the holy hell out of it because, well, we can. Let's check out this week's returns. La 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 la.
I'm back.
We're going to try to be optimistic here, although it is clear the government has officially clipped Ray, and for that we could be pessimistic, but somehow we'll get it all figured out. The good news is this out of the AgriLife today of good old Tamu. Listen, I absolutely love Texas A&M because we keep seeing these types of things come out of Texas A&M, and I feel like Texas, you either love it or hate it, right? I love it because growing up it was either it's Texas or it's Tennessee, right? And so to see strong things coming out of the University of Tennessee turfgrass program right now that arguably wasn't this time 20 years ago, and to see the great things coming out of Texas A&M in regards to turfgrass that arguably wasn't 20 years ago, this is really exciting. And it's the outreach perspective here. 2 turfgrass students on an all-female Little League softball grounds crew. Sometimes the education that takes place off campus is the most memorable and life-changing. Haley Tucker and Megan Muse, both sophomore students enrolled in the Turfgrass Sciences program at the Department of Soil and Crop Sciences at Texas A&M College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, got an opportunity of a lifetime recently when they were selected to be part of an all-female grounds crew for the Little League Softball World Series, the LLSWS in North Carolina. Tucker's in her second year in the Turfgrass Science program, and Muse is in her first year as a Turfgrass Science student, with her freshman year started as a plant and environmental soil science major. The students work at the Turfgrass Research Lab for Weston Floyd, a research specialist, Chase Straw, PhD, Texas A&M AgriLife Research Turfgrass Scientist and Assistant Professor, both in the Department of Soil and Crop Sciences. Floyd and Straw helped the young women get this opportunity to attend and work on the LLSWS grounds crew, where they spent 4 days gaining field staff experience and making connections in the industry. We strive to put our turfgrass science students in situations that will benefit them outside the classroom to gain hands-on experience and network with professionals across the industry. Megan and Haley have taken full advantage of these opportunities early in their undergraduate career and will no doubt benefit them after graduation. And then it goes on to actually have a little bit of an interview with them, and I highly recommend you read it and actually dive a little bit into their minds as women in the turfgrass industry, because for a long time this has been an industry. I call it a fraternity. And that's not because I think it should be exclusively male. It's because it has been male for so long. And definitely in my career, coming up in this industry, I have seen one woman that did tree and shrub applications across my X number of years that I've been in it at this point. And so to see young people, especially young women, expressing an interest in this, and especially at the professional level, is incredibly exciting. So kudos to these girls for doing the damn thing, especially at something as awesome as the Little League Softball World Series. I think that's fantastic.
Hey, always up for people entering the industry and doing so with pride and zeal. And it was a very cool event that they had down there. And I think again, if nothing else, it points people to the idea that this is a job, a career. It's not the kind of stuff that mom and dad normally see and say, you want to wait, you want to go to college to grow grass? Really? Yep. So
Hey, we're slowly changing, we're slowly evolving, but what's important is that we are evolving, and that's going to be, again, what's necessary for our industry to thrive. Our next one here, Atlee football plays on award-winning field courtesy of Raiders Turfgrass program. Hiya! You'd be hard-pressed to find a more patriotic end zone design than that of the Atlee Raiders. A star-studded A and T transition into half stars, half stripes L, before red and white stripes emblazon both E's, even down to the stars and stripes yardage markers. The detail of the field work is something any team would be proud to play on, and it's all courtesy of the high school's Turfgrass program, co-founded in 2001 by Virginia Tech grad and Atlee teacher Mark Moran. I believe we've talked about this program before. Moran and his students designed, originally conceptualized for the program's 2021 homecoming game. Over the summer, was awarded first place among national field that included minor league baseball teams and universities in the Sports Field Management Association annual Stars and Stripes conversations. SFMA is a nonprofit that manages facilities at schools, colleges, universities, parks and recreational centers, and professional sports stadiums across the United States. Atlee Stars and Stripes design garnered more than 500 votes. People assume you go out there with a big old stencil and make it happen, and that's not the way. Moran said the process behind bringing the design to life, adding that he helped with the concept, but his students did all the hands-on work. It takes a lot of time to plan out. It's really a community-based program, and it's fun to see kids take pride in what they're doing. And it goes on about this, and I think even more so than just a community building program, it builds a certain amount of DeMay. I'm gonna say this as ridiculous as possible. There's something about the guys that you absolutely, or girls up to this point, I say guys just because that's all I experience in the industry, but the guys you get out there and you grind with day in and day out, you develop a certain amount of mutual respect for, because they have tolerated the same level of intensity. They've performed at the same level of intensity that you have over the season. And that kind of camaraderie as a result of it, I don't know. Maybe you do experience in other industries, and I just haven't worked in enough of them to see, but it definitely builds a certain level of camaraderie, and it builds a lasting impression and a lasting, it's such a team concept that pushes each person to their limits, that I don't know. It's an amazing experience, just the camaraderie aspect of it. And again, I use the term fraternity because that's exactly what it feels like in essence.
No, I agree.
Do you agree?
I agree, and I think that for these kids to have the opportunity to do it in a space where they're not getting paid for it, and I don't mean that they're being taken advantage of, but I mean where they can actually learn, like where the whole purpose is not like, hey, we got to stay out in front of the golfers today. Hey, we got to do $1,000 on this truck today. Hey, first pitch is at 7:00, and we can't really teach you a whole lot. Their sole job in going into these classes is to learn and be taught and make mistakes and everything like that, and it's a great place to do it. And even if there's only, if there's 30 kids in this program, and 3 of them a year want to go into turf school, I think that's great. I think this is what we need, at a high school level to show people and show adults and their loved ones, parents, teachers, guidance counselors, that there is rewarding work here, both on an intrinsic level and an extrinsic level, right? So hopefully more and more of this will be coming. I know there's several programs here that are similar in Ohio that and it looks to be growing too. So hey, I'm all about people buying into the industry, jumping on in with 2 feet, Matt, and being the leaders of tomorrow when we all get clipped by the government.
It won't be long, and we'll all be dead, and we'll have.
But it'll
to
be
have
slow and
these kids.
torturous. I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah, for us it will be, but
Yeah.
probably deservedly. I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused to so many people. A review of the tall fescue fungicide trials in 2022. Lee Butler of NC State University has has released an updated review of fungicide efficacy trials on various diseases in tall fescue. I love the data that comes out of NC State. I love their turf files, and this is just another a great perspective of things you can expect, especially in the North Carolina area. I would say this would apply for the most part to the majority of areas in the transition zone. And what's interesting too is that they're already starting to tease some experimental sprayable products here, and with to varying degrees of efficacy, because not everything's going to be a home run, and we'll see what ends up being released and what doesn't end up being released. If I had to guess of these experimental types of products, we're going to these might fall into the microbial category, and this is going to be kind of like the things we saw out of Ag Biome when they started to come out with their bacteria or whatever Pseudomonas, I can't even remember what it is, type of fungicide. And so anyway, something to keep an eye on, especially for professional applicators that are out there, something you can quick reference right here and see what's going on. Go ahead, DeMay.
Hey, did you see in those results, could you tell me how humic acid and super juice fared? Where'd those end up on the table?
As non-treated control?
That's right. Okay.
And if you don't believe me, try it yourself. And because that's something I have done a significant amount of, because at one time, before it was humic acid, it was SumaGrow. Before it was SumaGrow, it was ICT Organics. After ICT Organics and SumaGrow, it was whatever, the guys that would install the refrigerator. The people that pretend
Organics.
like Organics. The people that pretend like this is new technology can shove it right up their ass, because people have been chasing the specific bacillus bacteria that's going to change the world since at least the 80s. And if I recall correctly, in the early 80s, that was like the dream, was that you had this bug in a jug that was going to change everything. And it's just recycled reiteration after recycled reiteration. Maybe you don't supply the actual bug, you supply the things that feed the bugs, kind of sort of deal. And apparently humic acid feeds the bugs, which I'm not seeing a whole lot of data that shows that either, but it's neither here nor there. Okay. For the mailbag, Andy, we have run way too long. I have listened to the people you have suggested here, and boy, oh boy, I'm going to do you one better. I'm not just going to talk about Gabe Brown and Joel Salatin. We are in the midst of talking to a farmer right now that actually subscribes and implements these types of organic methods pitched by Gabe Brown and Joel Salatin, and we are going to do an entire Thirsty Thursday episode with this guy. Let's go. And so the amount of data that we're going to be compiling and the amount of data that he's going to be bringing, because this is a multi-decade farmer that's coming, so I'm sure he's going to be bringing the thunder, and I promise you we're going to be bringing the thunder too, and it's going to be from two different perspectives, because one comes from agriculture, the other comes from turfgrass, and we're going to have an absolute great show of it. So Andy, bear with us. You are not forgotten. You are in fact, you are prioritized in a big way. We've never had a guest on just to appease one comment before. So thank you all for tuning in. We are going to go hang out with the we've got Ben the Lawn Guardian coming up on Thirsty Thursday. Right now we're going to go hang out with our patrons, patreon.com/burn-and-return, and let them pick this week's title of the episode. For those of you that don't know, we have a live show coming up. It's going to be a live meet and greet. We're going to be doing that in Louisville, Kentucky, all at the same dates of the Green Industry Expo, except we're going to be doing that off campus at our own little facility where it's going to be an amazing deal. It's not just a meet and greet. We're actually doing a live recording of Burn and Return there. It's a big deal. We got dinner, we got drinks. It's a legit production that we put on, and it's an opportunity to get to know us as the human beings, not just the people behind the microphones that get up here and ramble or that get clipped by the government from time to time. Love you, Ray. All right, we're out of here. Patreon.com/Burn and Return if you can or have the means. If not, no problem. We still love you. To the patrons,